Okay, welcome to Cloud Asta's Managing Drive for Your Organization. This is part of our series of training materials for Google admins and end users that we are running every 2 weeks on varying topics that we think will be helpful for our clients and for anybody else who is interested in learning a little bit more about managing Google Workspace. My name is Nick Marchese. I'm a director of academic technology at an independent school in New York. Today, our focus will be mainly on managing Drive for admins. If there are questions throughout, feel free to type them in the chat. Don't worry about waiting till the end, especially if we're on something that you have a specific question about. You can type something in the chat or raise your hand if you would like to unmute and speak. But if you want to just type in the chat, that is totally fine. And I'm happy to kind of answer as we go. And as we usually say, if there's anything that looks really interesting or really helpful in this, please take notes, but don't make any drastic changes to your admin console during the webinar, just because we want to make sure that you don't do something in haste before thinking it through and how it might impact your entire organization. And if there are no questions to start, we will go ahead and get started. And I've got a bit of a glare going on over here, so I'm going to lean back and try and make that work for us. Okay, let's go ahead and get going. So here's a little bit of the topics that we're going to kind of go through over today. Talk a little bit about storage and limits, admin config settings, which are going to take up most of our time today. Managing shared drives. We're going to talk a little bit about offline access, Drive for desktop, office editing, and we're going to dive into a little bit into highlights and reporting, and then probably one of the more important ones, end user training resources that you might be able to share or use yourself. So this is, I thought it would be a good way to start, just to kind of give everybody an idea of what storage and limits are for Google Drive for the different tiers of Google Workspace that you might be using. So everything from Frontline, giving you 2 gigabytes per user, to Enterprise with as much as you need, and then there are some other ones on the side with Business with the unlimited storage, individual accounts, and Business Standard, and all that jazz. So this is just really, I think, helpful information to know when you're considering what plan you are currently using and which plans you might need to be using. Maybe you need to make a change. Maybe you are currently on a basic plan and your users are quickly maxing out that 30 gigs and you want to go ahead and upgrade, and you need to think a little bit more about, okay, how does this work for a business plan account? Is this starters not going to be much different? So like, is the standard for you? Is the plus for you? Is it, we need to go enterprise? What are we looking for here? So we want to just give you a little bit of a map of what the different tiers were for our storage levels. This can be found on the Google Workspace support page as well. But we thought this would be helpful. If you have questions about your current plan, you're not sure which one you're on, or you're interested in learning a little bit more about changing, you can email us at webinars@cloudasta.com. We're happy to talk you through what might be the best way for you to move forward. All right, so we're going to do a little bit of demoing with some admin config settings, and I listed out a bunch of the things here, but we're gonna dive right into the admin console in a moment. Mainly about permissions and sharing and creation and access and all types of things. So just want to kind of leave a little bit of an agenda here, but we're going to go right into the admin console. So I have my admin console listed here, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so it'll make it a little bit easier for folks to see. So I'm going to go into apps because I need to navigate to my Drive settings. So I'm going to open up my side panel, you click it here, or you can just highlight out here. And I'm going to go ahead and click Apps. And I'm going to scroll down, Google Workspace, make sure that's expanded, and then Drives and Docs, in case you forget how to get here or you haven't been here before. So here you'll see some information. We've talked a little bit about the security update in the past. And we have here sharing settings, migration settings, and all these things that we're going to kind of go through. Okay. So let's go into sharing settings, because that's probably going to be the biggest bulk of the things that we want to talk about today. So we'll start with our sharing options here, which is how folks are going to be able to share files outside of your domain. So there's a couple different ways that you can structure this. So this is the highest level of sharing outside of your domain that you want to allow. So how accessible do you want to allow your users to share materials? They could always scale down, right? Everything can still be private, only shared with 1 or 2 people. But this is the highest level of sharing that you want to enable. So the big 3 options are off. You do not want anything in your domain to be shared outside of your domain. If you wanted that, you could select that. And you can see there's a little sub option here of, do you want to allow your users to receive files from users outside your domain? So maybe you don't want anybody to be able to share anything out, but you want to be able to get stuff shared in. Or maybe you want it completely locked down and you don't want anything going in or out. You would go ahead and select that and then uncheck that box. We have our whitelisted domain option here. So this way, if you want to share data with other domains, you can check this here and you can go ahead and whitelist those domains. So maybe you have a partner organization, or you only have specific organizations you want to be doing some sharing with. You can go in here and configure any whitelist domains that you want to go ahead and add there. And then you have some sub options here for files owned here. Do we want to warn the users when sharing them outside? Do you want them to be able to receive things from outside, similar to the setting up here? And do you want to allow users to send invitations to non-Google accounts as well? So not specifically folks who you know have Google accounts already, but folks who definitely don't. And then the most accessible one is going to be for on, right? This way, files owned by users can be shared outside of the domain, and it's going to apply for everything. And then you, again, have those sub options here about receiving and warning users and sending invitations. So check what you have that listed as. Again, I would say most folks are probably going to have it as on, but maybe you have it a little bit more locked down and you have it as whitelisted, or maybe you're really locked down and you have it as off. So depending on how collaborative your organization is with outside organizations. And so we got a couple more options here that I just want to quickly go over. When sharing an outside link, right? When sharing outside with your outside of your domain is allowed, users in your domain can make files and publish content visible to anyone on the web. So a great example of this is there's a doc that you're working on internally, and then you publish it to the web so that folks don't need to be shared that doc. They can just go to a public-facing link, kind of looks like a web page, and that way anybody can view it as web content. So do you want public link sharing enabled or not enabled? This way, this gives you a little bit more flexibility to share things in a view-only sort of sense as web content. But if you don't want that to be accessible, you could turn that off. Access checker is going to make it so that when you share files, it's going to check if the recipients have access to the file or not. And we want to make sure that we have this on, and we want to make sure that we have it also for the public. That way we can know whether or not the public has access to those files. And then last but not least within this section is distribution. So who do you want to be able to share content that resides in your domain outside of your domain? So I have a file that I've shared with a different organization. I don't want that different organization member to be able to share it with another organization member. So I want only users within my domain to be able to share files outside of my domain. If you have it on anyone, then that secondary domain user would be able to share it with that tertiary user. But I want to leave it so only folks within my domain can make those changes. Okay, we're going to hit cancel. We'll go ahead and see some other stuff in here. Okay, we're going to go and make sure we're going to go into link sharing just to make sure that this is set up correctly. When using your domain, create items. The default link sharing access will be, and it should be off. That way, when you make a new document, no matter if it's in your My Drive, that document is owned and viewable only by the owner, the creator. This way, it just makes it a little bit safer to make sure that everything that you are creating is shared with the appropriate people, and then you can go ahead and share it after you've created it, versus the default being other folks. So that might be a setting that you want to play around with, and you have a specific target audience, maybe you have a subset of your organization that you want shared on every single thing that's created. You might explore these other options a little bit more, but I would say a majority of the folks are going to have link sharing set to default as off. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about shared drives, right? So shared drives are a really awesome tool that was originally team drives, became shared drives, where everything is owned by everybody in the shared drive, and everything is not owned by nobody all at the same time. This has a lot of prevents listed on here. So this is, do you want to prevent users in your domain from creating new shared drives? If you enable this, this is going to put more on the admin members, maybe you, maybe somebody else, to create shared drives for different teams. If it is unchecked, then anybody can go ahead and create a shared drive. Preventing full access members from modifying a shared drive. So maybe you don't want anybody to be able to modify those shared drive settings except for you as the admin. Similar thing. And then do you want to allow folks outside of your domain to access files in your shared drive? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Again, specific files, not entire shared drives. So if you do, great, leave this checked off. If you do not, you want to check that on. Similarly, do you want non-members of a shared drive from accessing files in it? So maybe you have 3 members in a team A shared drive, and you want to share it with 1 member of team B, one of the files. If this is checked on, they will not be able to see that file. But if this is unchecked, then you will have the option to share with team members not on a shared drive. And then prevent commenters and viewers from downloading, copying, and printing files in a shared drive. This would be a blanket setting saying that, like, unless you have edit access, you can't download, copy, or print stuff that's in a shared drive. Maybe that's helpful if you want to tighten down batten down the hatches a little bit for your security, but otherwise you can uncheck that as well. Okay, we're going to leave the security update for now, and we're going to kind of pop out of here, out of our sharing settings, and see what else we have. So migration settings, we only got one migration setting in here. So allowing users to migrate files to shared drives. So if you create shared drives, or you have users create shared drives, to be able to give them access to move files from a My Drive or a shared folder into the shared drive, this needs to be enabled. Otherwise, you as the admin need to be moving files over. So users still cannot move entire folders. They have to move files or groups of files, but they can't even do that unless you have this on. So if you want users to be able to migrate stuff into a shared drive, keep this setting on. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about managing shared drives in a few minutes. You have an option here to transfer ownership of all of a user's files from one user to another. Maybe if you have a successor to a role happening when somebody's leaving. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about features and applications and some templates. So we're going to come back to offline in a moment. Smart Compose, do you want to allow users to have Smart Compose suggestions in docs, where it automatically tries to guess what you're saying, and it kind of gives you that little ghosted text, and you can tab and just save you a little bit of time. Yes or no, totally up to you. We're going to talk a little bit about Google Drive for Desktop in a few minutes, and Drive here. So we're going to leave all these things alone. And then this is kind of the big one that should be checked on, is do you want to allow users to create new Google Drive files? If this is checked off, then there's going to be a lot of issues where they can't really use Google Drive. And having this on as well, this allows users to create new docs. So these should just be checked on. We just want to go ahead and make sure that they are. And last but not least on this, templates. So templates are really super if you want to be able to, have letterhead, have slide deck templates, things like that. You can go in and configure the template categories. Maybe you got a couple different categories in here. And let me cancel out of here. And then for submission. So like, do you want anybody to be able to submit a template to the template gallery? Do you want it only to be moderated so that you have to approve which templates go in there? Or do you want it so only admins can add templates to the template gallery? So I think by default, this is probably on moderated, but think about the size of your organization. You can see recommended for small, it's probably open, recommended for larger, it's probably gonna be moderated, and what you can handle as an admin in your role and what you wanna open up. Okay, so we spent a lot of time in there, but I think that was all good stuff, and we will come back to some of those details more in a moment. All right, I want to quickly talk a little bit about managing shared drives. So you as an admin can manage shared drives from the admin console. It's probably the easiest way to go ahead and manage members and shared drive settings. So my favorite way is just to start typing into the search bar, manage shared drives, and it pops up here right as your first one there. So I'm going to click that, and I can see all the shared drives in our domain. And you can see down here, I've got this Nix webinar shared drive demo. And when I go over here, I can see a couple different settings. So my first one is manage members. So if you click this, we can go ahead and add members to the shared drive. So I can say, great, I'm going to add Nick at a different domain, and I can choose what kind of role I want to give myself. I'm going to make it a contributor, and do you want to notify this person, and do you want to say, this is a shared drive you are now on. Okay, great, we're going to click send, and great, I know I'm sharing to somebody outside of my domain. Super. Okay, and I also want to show about these settings. So if I click this settings box, there's a couple different things here. So we want to allow managers, which is the highest level of permissions a user can have, to modify these settings that we see in front of us right here. If we uncheck that, only an admin will be able to edit those settings. And then the settings that we see here, do you want to allow people outside of your domain to add, can be added to these files? Do you want people who aren't in the shared drives? You see, these are the same settings we basically saw in the admin console, and they're just reflected here. But if you want to override it for the specific shared drive, you can do so here. So this is just a matter of people outside, do you want to be able to get to this? People that are not team members, do you want to be able to get to files? And do you want only viewers to be and commenters to be able to download or print or not? So just be careful of what this setting is here and what it is in your admin console, and make sure that everything is what you want it to be in those spaces. And then if you were to delete, like we have this deleted shared drive here, we go to this, we can restore it and bring it back. Okay, moving right along. So offline access. Offline access is really helpful if you have team members who are going off the grid. They aren't going to have access to Wi-Fi, and what you need to do and what they need to do to be able to work off the web, but still being able to work in docs and sheets and all that jazz. So for management, I'm going to go back into my Google Drive settings here for a second. I'm going to go into features and applications, and we see that there was an offline button up here that I skipped over. And you see that there are two settings here. Do you want to control offline access by device policies, which requires you to going through a step-by-step process of enrolling and managing those devices and sharing out policies, or just allow users to enable it if they want it. I would say most organizations are just going to leave it on allow. That's why it's recommended. But you need to make sure that this is on before anybody can actually use this. Okay. And then for your users, there's a lot of things that they need to be doing. And this is something that you can share out with them. There's a resource that we'll share out as well. They need to make sure that before they turn it on, they're connected to the internet, they're using Chrome, they've installed the Docs offline Chrome extension, they have enough space on their hard drive, and then they have to go into Drive, enable Docs offline access, and then save the files for offline use. So I'll just show you those second pieces. If I go to my Drive here, zoom on in, see if that helps us. I'm going to click that cog at the very top and click Settings. I'm pretending I'm a user right now. And I'm going to go down to this setting right here in the middle. It says Offline, and I'm going to click that and enable it. It says, don't enable this on public or shared computers. I'm going to hit done. See on the bottom up, it says setting up offline. That's going to spin for a minute or two. And then once that's done, your users can right-click on a file, and they can save specific files that they want for offline editing access. This might be something that they want to do. Maybe they don't. It's totally up to them. But there's a couple different steps that they need to take into account. You would normally just right-click. Mine's taking a little bit up, and then we're going to toggle on available offline for files that they want. Okay. So really helpful, but we have to make sure that we're prepared before we go off the grid. Drive for desktop. Maybe you have users who really like the desktop interface when navigating their files, but they really still like using Drive. So show them how to use Drive for desktop. Drive for desktop is an application that they can install on Windows and Mac that syncs essentially shortcuts to all of your docs and maintains the folder structure on your desktop. So this way they install it, and it's really easy for them to just still navigate in Finder or Explorer on their computer, double-click on those files, and it just brings them into the browser to those specific files. So it's just a different way for them to be navigating Drive, not in the browser, but on your desktop computer. There is an admin setting in here also about making sure that Google Drive for Desktop is on. So make sure that Google Drive for Desktop is on, and giving users the ability to download that and install that. Office editing. So maybe you have folks who still love using Excel and Word all the time, but you want to have their files stored in Google just because of all the capabilities that it's giving you. So pair Drive for Desktop, which we just talked about, with Office editing. So when your users save Word files in Google Drive, whether that's on the web or using the Drive for Desktop application, if they double-click on those Word files from Drive, they can still edit those files in Word, and they're still saving and syncing to Drive. So that way you kind of have a backup solution happening as you're still editing Word files that's cloud-based, which is really, really great and kind of giving you the best of both worlds. So just encouraging your users to be saving Office files within Drive, whether they're using the web or using Drive for Desktop, it's going to be extremely, extremely helpful. Great. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about highlights and reporting. I know we're going a little tight, so I'm just going to do a quick overview. So I'm going to go back into my admin console here. I'm going to click my reporting on the left side and see a couple different things. I'm going to click highlights to just see really the basic highlights that I see here. This is showing me highlights from everything, not just Google Drive. So if I scroll, oh, I'm zoomed in. That's why this looks a little weird. Okay, so now I can see right here, I can see how much storage is being used on my entire domain, how many Drive files are shared externally. If I click this View Details, it's going to bring me to the next part that I wanted to go to, which is under Reports. So if I were to go to Reports, and then it comes into Apps Reports, and I click Google Drive, you can see I've got a couple different reports here. So I can see how many things are shared externally and when were they shared externally, what are the internal things that are shared, how many files have been added, how many active users I have, so on and so forth. And you can manage what this looks like and move them around and all that jazz. That kind of gives you a little bit of insight into what is going on with your Drive. And then if you want to look at specific Drive usage for individual users, you go into User Reports and click Apps Usage. And for each user, you can see Drive storage use. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Drive storage use. I'm going to scroll down and down. And you can see we got some numbers here, and that's going to be in megabytes. Total storage use. Let's see if we go further on. So it says Google Docs added, Google Sheets added, Google Slides added, and it gives us a number that we can go ahead and use if people have those there. So that's going to be just a little bit helpful if you're trying to see where is all my storage being used, and you want to go ahead and drill it down a little bit more into that specific user. And then if you were to go into the audit log, that gives you less about storage, but if you wanted to go ahead and see any changes that were happening with your Drive files in your organization. So things are created, things are shared, things are added, things are moved. You could see a log of all of the things that are going on with your Drive files. You can see I've got on my shared drive here that I just added that member. I have a membership change here. And that way you can kind of see everything that's going on. All right, and then the last but not least is our end user training resources, which is going to bridge us right into our next webinar in 2 weeks. About like, this is all great, we could set it all up, but like we need to make sure our users know how to do things. So we put together a whole list of links that are going to be helpful for admins and for users about how to use Drive. So we'll share these out, but these first links, Google Drive has a really great landing page for all things training for Drive related stuff. And all the stuff below it kind of falls from that page. They have a really great online course that has, this is just one of the modules. It says Introduction to Google Drive. It has a couple of videos, a doc, a quiz, and it has a whole bunch more modules that helps you walk you through getting used to Google Drive with their course interface. So I highly recommend that if you have somebody who's never used it before and they want to go ahead and engage in a course-like setting. And then they have some cheat sheets, Drive cheat sheet and a shared Drive cheat sheet. I've included the Drive cheat sheet here, one of the little graphics. So that way it just like points to everything on Google Drive and like, what does it do? Where are the things? Like make a copy and getting a link. How do I share something? And how do I get the shared drives? And where is my trash? So those cheat sheet graphics are really, really super, both for Drive and shared drives. And then there's a link for how to use Drive for desktop. There's a cheat sheet there for Drive for desktop, which will be helpful for both admins and end users. So we're going to put out these links up on the YouTube page after we're done. But I highly recommend looking up the Google Workspace Learning Center, which has all of this stuff, and looking for the Google Drive one, and it has all these courses and cheat sheets listed available there. And then I just want to spiral quickly into our end user webinar, which is coming up in 2 weeks, of getting the most out of Google Drive for end users. We'll be going over a lot of these individual things, talking about offline access, Drive for desktop, so on and so forth, as well as how do we just navigate Drive? What does a share mean? Things like that. And then 2 weeks after that, we're going to do another recap of highlighting the best new Google Workspace features released in July and August, and there have been a lot. So there is a lot to cover, and that'll be a really, really fun session, and we really, really hope that you attend. And I'm going to open it up to questions, and I'm going to stop our recording here.